The video audio is fine. Hey, man, thanks a lot. I hope this wasn't too much of a hassle or an
No,
inconvenience.
I'm sorry. It was just that I was at this thing, and then I was trying to get out of there. I was at a friend's baby shower, and then I was trying to get out, and then I couldn't get a cab.
Oh, I helped you, man, because I got you out of, gave you a good excuse to get out of a fucking baby shower, man.
You know,
I helped your ass. No, I'm
I
just kidding.
know, although there were a lot of hot pregnant women there. No,
Uh,
no, but then I actually left, and then I was like, oh shit, I gotta get uptown, and then it's fucking like 4 inches of snow outside.
oh, it's
You in
snowing.
New York? Where are you?
No, I'm in Edmonton, Canada, where it's actually warmer here than it is where you are right now. So
Oh, you're in Wait, what time zone are you in?
I'm in Mountain, so I'm 2 hours behind. I've got shows up here this week. I got one more tonight, and then I fly to LA for the month, and I'm in LA.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's like snowing, like it's like we've got like a foot of snow coming down
Jesus,
now.
again? Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
it's ridiculous. So like basically, there were no cabs because
Huh.
they haven't. It just started today, so they haven't even plowed the streets yet. So there's like
Oh man.
so anyway. But I was lucky to get one, so I was able to get home.
Oh yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, I really appreciate it. So yeah, I figured because my schedule's so crazy and yours, I really wanted to do it at the show face to face. But this is going to be great. So, but be
All right.
easier. So
Well, I'm glad you could do it this way as well.
yeah.
I haven't been to the show that much, so that's why I wasn't there that night when you were.
Yeah. So tell me before we start what you want me to plug in particular. You want me to plug Halal in the Family? What do you want me to plug?
You can plug Halal in the Family is coming out, in April on the web. You can also plug my book, No Land's Man,
Yeah.
which is available now.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Uh,
Is
and
there
then
any? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
and then maybe we can we can plug The Brink as well, which
Yeah.
is an HBO show.
Okay. And I've got a bunch of stuff. I mean, I knew you obviously, but also did some research, and I know you've talked a lot about a lot of different stuff, kind of probably in a few different areas, with different outlets or whatever. Is there anything in particular you want to talk about other than plugging? But I mean, or we
I
can.
mean,
I kind of know what I want to talk to you about, but if there's anything in particular you're tired of talking about, or you want to talk about, or whatever.
I mean, I think let's just talk about whatever. I can't think of anything. I mean,
All right.
the Daily Show I end up talking about a lot, but it's fine. People.
Well, I'll just mention that because that's obviously our connection, and I just think the story, which I know you've told a bunch about, like kind of initially how you got on, it was kind of interesting, and part of it I didn't actually know, which I'll mention in my question, but we won't spend a ton of time on that. There's some interesting areas I want to go to that more inform people about you in the whole, not just as a Daily Show person. So let's just jump in, man. We'll just jump in, swear, do whatever you want, call my mother a whore. I don't care. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Lydia, we're good to go. I guess you can hear me
We're
okay,
ready to
right?
rock.
Okay, here we go. 1 second. Let me just pull something up here. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's podcast. Very excited to have my friend on, Aasif Mondavi, correspondent, Middle Eastern correspondent, whatever. He's a guy on The Daily Show, and we work together on the show. Hey, buddy, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. In addition to being a correspondent on The Daily Show, accomplished actor, writer, producer, he's won 2 Obie Awards for his acting. He starred in a number of movies, $1 Million Arm, which, by the way, I watched with my wife and my kid, and we loved it. And you were great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's a really great movie, like for adults and kids. Really, really well done. Margin Call with space. What's that?
It's a nice film. I feel like I wish it had gotten a little bit more traction, but it definitely, I think it's a great story, and it's just a beautiful, and
Yeah.
John Hamm is great in it, and the guys are great. It's
Well,
good.
you're great as not just the comic relief, but you play really well off of each other, you and Ham. And I thought it was nice because I know, you tend to get typecast, obviously, because of who you are as a Muslim, and but in this role was a good role if you want to get typecast because it was really positive in terms of the message and everything about these two young.
Actually, the story of that is that I So in the movie, it's based on a true story about J.B. Bernstein, who is a sports agent who took these two kids from India. He created this thing called $1 Million Arm, which was this sort of talent show in India looking for anybody who had a pitch of 85 miles per hour or higher, And they were hoping to find cricket players and turn them into, baseball players. But anyway, so it's based on a true story, and there's actually the character that I play is named Ash, and he is JB's business partner in the film. But there's a real guy named Ash.
There is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a John Hamm plays J.B. Bernstein, who's a real guy.
Right, and I knew that. I didn't know there was a real actor.
And Ash Vasudevan is a real guy also. He's not actually in real life JB's business partner. He's actually one of the investors in the in the $1 Million Arm franchise. But he is a buddy of mine. So it was weird because I was playing him.
Oh wait, you knew him before the movie?
Yeah, so the thing is that, like,
how did you know him? How do you guys have a relationship?
Well, the way this happened was that I have a friend here in New York who knows Ash, who lives out in San Francisco, and my friend Ruma, she was like, well, my buddy Ash is producing this movie with Disney called $1 Million Arm, and you should get your name in there. So basically, it was like a thing where, like, I just heard about this, and she said, let me call Ash and tell him that they should see you for this film, and I got a hold of the script through my agents, and I read it, and initially they were not interested in me. Like Ash pitched me for the film, but the director and the Disney people had different ideas, and there was a lot of other names that they were tossing around, and
like Brad Pitt or.
Well, I think they were thinking like Aziz Ansari, or you know what I mean, like they were going different Indian guys, right? And so, but it so turned out that I ended up meeting up with the producer who really liked me and wanted me to, and I ended up getting it. And it was weird because Ash had been working sort of like pitching me the whole time behind the scenes.
Oh, wow.
Before I got the movie, like he was like, I want Aasif to play me in the film. So anyway, I ended up playing him in the film, and it was fun because Ash in real life is kind of, I don't think he'll be upset with me saying this. He's sort of like a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy, and,
which you're not in the movie.
So in the movie, I was like, I'm going to be looking good. Because I was like, I got to stand next to John Hamm this entire film. So if I wear jeans and a t-shirt, I'm going schlubby to schlub. It's going to be just schlub to schlub,
Wait. See, so this is your own personal ego. It's not like you were trying to represent your culture in a classy way. You just want to get laid. You want to look good next to John Hamm.
I was like, there's no way I'm looking good next to John Hamm. Like, I'm standing next to like one of the most handsome people on television. Through this whole, I was like, basically, I'm gonna be dressed up. I'm gonna wear a suit. I don't care if he's got a baseball hat. And
you were wearing high heel. You were wearing like lifts in your shoes and everything, probably.
I had my hair jerry curled. It was like
as high as you could get it. Yeah.
Right. It was like, and we were shooting in Atlanta, and it was in the summertime, and Atlanta is hotter than Bombay. Like, it's literally like it is 100 degrees outside, and Ham is wearing like t-shirt and jeans and a baseball cap, and I'm like, no, I'm wearing a fucking suit and a thing, and I'm looking good,
How are you not dying in that suit? Were you sweating through it? Like, I didn't notice it, but like you must have been
sweaty. But I was like. But I used to joke with Ash that I gave him way more fashion style in the movie than he has in real life,
Oh my God. It's such a great story. I'm glad you told that, because one of the things I try to do in my podcast is kind of give people a peek behind the people who they know from afar and get a sense of how things actually work in Hollywood. And they like, this is such a great story of like, they wanted somebody else, but you knew the guy and the guy knew the guy and blah, blah, blah. And
ultimately, like it was one of those things where Ash had been pitching me, but then I did meet with Craig Gillespie, who directed the film, and we actually had a great meeting. And then I remember the producer emailed me and said, look, they're thinking about this other guy. Maybe it was Aziz. I don't know who it was. Mm-hmm. But there were other people that were in the mix. And he said, I want you to write an email to Craig telling him why you feel like you want to do this role and like how you would play this part, because I think you could really. So I wrote this long email.
And what was the other than saying I want to stand next to John Hamm and be able to get laid? What did you tell them the motivation was and what you could bring to it?
I said, like, this is a really interesting character, and he is sort of the grounding element. You know, Ham plays this playboy type character in the film, you know,
right.
This kind of, you know, ladies' man,
but also a guy who I think for the first time in his life figured out that he was sort of up against it. Like, I think my sense of that character and that person was that handsome, good-looking, kind of always got what he wanted to, always the guy that won, you know, everything and got the ladies, and then suddenly, for the first time in his life, had to figure out how to deal with defeat or obstacles.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I mean, that exactly. And then next to him is this more grounding character, I think. You know, the guy who's like playing the bass line. You know, he's like holding the beat. You know,
right?
And I felt like that was the Ash character. And also, I said, look, it's very, you don't see a lot of Indian American, characters in the arena of sports and in the American sports, you know? So for this guy to be a sports agent is a really interesting character in this film. And it's not a character that you see portrayed in Hollywood that much. You don't see an Indian American guy as a sports agent that often, you know?
That's a good point.
And so it was like, I really like that, and I want to bring as much of that. I forget what exactly all I wrote, but I wrote this long email, and Craig basically emailed me back and was like, "You had me at hello." Like, it was basically.
Great. And well, so you could obviously tell your passion, and you know, you've actually said you'd like to get to the point where you see in Hollywood South Asian men playing leading men, but it's for some reason either, and I want to know why you think this, it's not acceptable yet for South Asian men to be sexual and to be leading men in that sense. Why? That never dawned on me, but I guess it's true. Tell me why you feel that way.
I think it's true for South Asian men. I think it's true for Asian men as well. I think it's like, it's okay for us to be funny, smart, you know, intelligent, like all these things, you know, but we're not allowed to be often sexual. We're not allowed to be heroes.
And why do you think that is?
I think it's because ultimately the narrative is still seen through the eyes of the white man. You know, like you still see the story, even with $1 Million Arm, and I love the movie. The story is still told through the lens of a white man, even though it's about these two Indian kids, you know, and it's about the white man's journey to his own, you know, and that is, you know, I point out that about $1 Million Arm, and that it's a tremendous movie and works as a tremendous story, but that is pervasive in Hollywood, that the stories that are told, the narrative is owned by Caucasians.
Yeah, and I do think that's a reflection of our culture. I mean, I'm Italian. My parents were born here, but my grandparents were born in Italy, and I go out for parts as an actor, and a lot of times I get the Italian stuff, right? The mafia guy, or like the pizza commercial, literally. And like, I do think that narrative is controlled, you know, not by Italian Americans, by non-Italian Americans, if you want to call them Jewish, if you want to call them WASP, I don't know what, you know, but you know, the white sort of power elite are controlling that narrative, which goes back to the Mayflower, frankly. And I think that it takes a long time for that needle to move for you know, the Irish, the Italians, the Greeks kind of all get sort of boxed in, and in your case, what you're saying, South Asian actors as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that's been the struggle, and it's come a long way, and you know, we have, I mean, what's great about, for example, Mindy Kaling and her show, is you know, more than that, she's a woman, and she's not a sort of, you know, I think what's breakout about that is that she's a woman. She's not exactly what people want to say traditionally attractive. You know what I mean? Like in the way that like TV, but more importantly than that, she's also a brown woman. You know, and I think that is a remarkable milestone for a brown woman to have controlled the narrative in terms of of that show, and to be the lead of that show. Which, so I think things have come a long way and are moving, but I still think that overall, in a large cultural way, the narrative is still controlled through the lens of white people. Like, it's still like you're still the other, seen through the, you know what I mean? And I think in a country where, in 2042 there's going to be less white people in America than anybody else,
Yeah, that's totally
like it needs to be reflect. I mean, I hope we get to a place where we can have stories, and they're American stories, seen through the lens of an Asian character, or you know what I mean, or a South Asian character, or a Middle Eastern character, or whatever. Like, I think in the same way, you don't even have African Americans other than a few handful, like that really are allowed to carry the narrative, hold the narrative.
Hey, can you do me a favor? Do you have headphones on by any chance?
Yeah, I don't right now. No.
Can you put them on, because there's a little bit of feedback if I'm like saying something while you're saying something. If you can just pop them on real quick, I think it might fix the problem, and we'll just edit this part out.
Yeah. All right. Let me hold on a second.
Sorry, man.
How's that?
I think that's going to be better. Let's jump back in and try it, and I'll pick up from where you were just talking what you were just talking about. You make a good point about African Americans. There's the Denzel Washington, and is one person that comes to mind, and you talk about sort of being defined by others. And I'm curious, is like, my question for you is like, who are you? Because there's something interesting about you. You were born in India at a young age. Moved to England.
Well, I was born at a young age. That's very true.
You were born at a young age in India, did I say? And because a lot of people tend to try to be born at an older age, and
it's hard. It's hard to do. It doesn't work out.
It hasn't really worked out. Well, white people.
One guy, Benjamin Button. That was it.
Benjamin Button. That was it.
Yeah.
And
but I know. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, and then you were raised until the age of 16 in England, and then you came to America, moved to Florida. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but you're sort of this mix of sort of Eastern and Western culture. And how do you see yourself? You've said that you're not a devout Muslim. I mean, I'm not a devout Catholic. I was raised Catholic, but I'm not super religious either. And do you see yourself as Eastern, Western, or some mix of both? And how does that inform all of that, what you do as an artist, as an actor, as a writer, producer?
I think that for a long time, look, my book that I wrote is called No Land's Man. Yeah. And there's a reason that it's called No Land's Man, because it is about identity, and it is about that dislocation and feeling like you belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time, And I think for many years, especially growing up, and I sort of chronicle this in the book, there was a real struggle with that, and a real navigating through various, different cultures. Like you said, I grew up in England, and then Florida, and then New York.
Well, and I know you were bullied. You were bullied in England, and you call it packy bashing, and you could talk about that a little bit. And did you experience that in America as well? And what would they do to you in England? Like, what was just name calling?
Well, I mean, what I was going to say was that, yes, I mean, in England it was more, just I was a kid, and it was just
that typical stuff. Yeah,
I went to boarding school, and you were constantly like, I mean, I talk about this in the book, that like, one of the big differences I think in the immigrant experience in England versus the U.S. for me was that in England it always felt like, I grew up in England in the 70s and early 80s, and it was you always felt like you would never be British, like no matter how long you lived there. No matter how many, people you employed, whatever, like your citizenship, you would never be British. They would always see you as other. And that may be just something in the British psyche of, having sort of defended their island from invasion for thousands of years, So that could be. But in America, I found something else to be true, which is that like you got here, and it's like there was this kind of sense of embracing the immigrant story, but at the same time, there seemed to be an incredible lack of curiosity in the American psyche about other cultures and about other histories, and
So there was this paradox of accepting you, but not really interested beyond the surface about what.
Right, like in America, it just felt like you pledge allegiance to the flag, and now you're an American. It doesn't matter that you came from like 5,000 years of culture and that your ancestors invented the alphabet. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it
Right.
was kind of like I say in the book, like Americans think of the rest of the world the way New Yorkers think of the rest of America. They don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think it's kind of like
It's
it's
a
kind
really
of like that thing, and so but ultimately I think what happened to me was that I found a place, and this is where I think I am hopefully more today, which is embracing the multiplicity, embracing. I mean, that's what happened
of
to me.
America or of the world?
No, of myself, in
yourself.
terms of like this, being an American, being a Brit, being an Indian, being Muslim, being, South Asian, being like embracing that as actually not a liability, but actually my power, and it is where all of my, my identity stuff is really where all my writing comes from.
Yeah,
it's even what I do on the Daily Show.
Yeah, it's funny because something that jumped out at me in thinking about this and talking to you is there's an irony, and tell me if you agree with this, because getting on the Daily Show is an interesting path for you, and you could elaborate this on a little bit if you want. But you were approached about auditioning. You were like, I don't know that I want to audition for it. It's going to be just another comedy show doing these broad negative stereotypes of Arabs, and I'm going to be like a crazy Arab yelling death to America, blah blah blah. I don't want any part of that. You come to find out, no, that's not the kind of show it is. You do a great job. You get hired. You are the Middle Eastern correspondent. And so what I find is that, and tell me if you agree with this, that the very thing that you resisted ended up sort of defining you in a way that you didn't want to be defined, but in a positive way. And then you've taken that now and run with it with a great book in enlightening people about these issues that you're talking about. You've got a series coming out on the web in April called Halal in the Family, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is your way of enlightening people to sort of the racism and stereotyping in a negative way of Muslims. So in a weird way, I find there's some irony in a good way that the very thing that you thought the Daily Show was going to do to you in a negative way turned out to be a positive thing that you're now using in positive ways. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, and I hadn't really actually thought of it that way. So kudos to you. Like,
yeah, well, I don't know when kids are born, but I know that. I know some shit.
No, it's true. The sort of the racial reductiveness, the stereotyping that I was afraid of, happened, but happened in a different. I mean, it didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen, but it happened in a way that I actually wanted to embrace, which was it wasn't a reductive thing. It didn't become a reductive thing. It actually helped me in some ways identify something about my multiplicity and my look on the Daily Show. I was able to do something which I think other correspondents were not able to do, which is that because I was an immigrant and had that sort of, I could speak about the culture as an insider and an outsider at the same time.
Right, because you're a Westerner and an Easterner, which is
and so like often like we
you're
would do
straddling that fence, so to speak.
Right,
yeah.
so like we would do these stories about the Middle East, war on terror, like whatever, like Islam or India or whatever, and I felt like I could straddle that fence and speak from both sides of it, and that was a very unique and powerful position. And I realized after a little while that was actually a powerful position to come from, and it was a voice that was underrepresented in the culture.
But it's interesting because I know you were sort of struggling with, like we all do, typecasting. I know you've told a story about like you went up for a part of a snake charmer and they asked you if you had a turban and all this other stuff, and so I applaud you for not shutting down. Like you could have just gone, all right, well I'll just do this role and it's a role and it's money on the Daily Show. But you really took and grabbed the mantle, and also just like a social activist, you do charity work for Muslim causes and so forth. Like you really have embraced the thing that you were fighting to become because you wanted to be viewed through the lens of Hollywood as not just a South Asian actor, but as an actor. And so did you have to like lie in bed at night and did a light go off, or did this just sort of gradually hit you that, you know what, this Daily Show thing is the best thing that ever happened to me in that sense?
I don't know if it was a light bulb moment. It was more of something, they say that like, um, when you turn towards the thing that you're most afraid of, and face it and move towards it, you actually, there's a tremendous, you take away you take away the fear. You know what I mean? You sort of, you empower yourself by doing that, and often it's that thing that we're afraid of. That's the direction that we often need to move into. And probably there was something in me that had spent a good deal of my career being afraid of being stereotyped and reduced and sort of put into this, box, right? And then the Daily Show comes along, and it wasn't that I was put into a box because like I said, there was a multiplicity to who I could be, you know?
Yeah. The box was only the box in a sense was the label Middle Eastern correspondent. The content allows you to sort of break the box. The content is allowing you to do the very thing that I think you were trying to do as an actor through roles.
Right. And so the content the fact that I was able to comment and like talk about it and speak into the zeitgeist in that way, like was incredibly powerful. And it didn't feel reductive. It felt expansive. It felt like I was using the identity and my South Asianness, my Muslim background, like all that stuff as a source of power rather than a source of being sort of reduced, as a source of opening up people and like saying something that was not being said rather than playing into other people's stereotypes, but challenging those stereotypes in some way, So it was an interesting reversal and something that initially I was uncomfortable with, but then have found tremendous fulfillment in that as well,
And the nice thing is that you're actually a little taller than Jon Stewart, so you didn't have that whole John Hamm thing to deal with. You just show up and you're like, I'm towering over this.
I was towering. Yes, exactly. People don't know he's like 2.5 feet tall. Like
he really is.
He's not a big guy at all.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but after I do the warm up, I bring him out. There's about a 10-minute production where they have these guide wires and they hook them to his belt loop and they hoist him on little Manhattan phone books. And when he's behind the desk, the most amazing thing is his feet are not touching the ground. And a lot of people are not aware of that. And
I don't think people know that. Yeah.
Every once in a while, he will slip because those phone books are glossy and they can be slippery. He will slip and fall, and then we have to stop the taping and prop him back up. And he has to be held like a baby and fed a bottle. But he's leaving the show now. So
get it out now, but while he's still there. He's gone. So you don't care.
There's a really funny story. I really related to this because when you audition for stuff, especially early on, not that this was early on in your career for the Daily Show, but like you'll say yes, I can do anything. Can you juggle? Yeah, I can juggle, just to get the part, and then you worry about it later. And so you're not a devout Muslim, and so here you are playing a Middle Eastern correspondent, and your father like said something really funny. I thought about like you of all people getting this role, and to tell what he said.
Well, he said, you don't even know how to do salam to your parents. Like how are you his Muslim correspondent? Like he was just like, this is going to be bad. And then he said, look, don't ever say, if Jon Stewart asks you anything about Islam or your opinion about Islam, don't say anything because you don't know what you're talking about. Just have him call your mother, okay? Just have him.
That's hilarious.
And so like that was this, and I was like, but again, I had no idea when I first started on the show, it was like, oh, this Middle Eastern bit that I was doing,
Oh, listen, I remember the day you auditioned because it was unheard of. He came in, for people who don't know, you came in and auditioned that day. You were on the show that night.
I was on the show that night. It was, I don't think, it was completely unprecedented. And it was also really surprising to me. Like I thought I was part of a gag. I thought this is a joke, right? Like,
so let me ask you something. Do you think part of it was like you threw it away? Like, sometimes you go up for shit and you go, you know what, I don't give a shit about this. I don't really want it, whatever. I'll just do it. And then you do great because your instrument is relaxed and all that other stuff. And you do you think there was a little bit of that going on? I mean, not that you're not talented and you didn't get it on the merit of your talents, but like, it's not, did you have a little bit of a like, yeah, if I get it, great. If I don't care kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's that old adage that actors have, which is that you always get the jobs that you don't really care about that much. And there's truth in that. And the reason is because you are loose and you're like you said, your instrument is open and available, and you're not like, when you care and you're like, I really need this job.
I know.
You get tight and you get you get scared of making choices, and so I think that what happened to me was that I never thought I was going to get it. I thought it was just no. I just thought it was because I was like, this is not. I didn't know who else they were looking at, and I didn't come from like sort of the traditional stand-up comedy background, which I thought that's where the Daily Show correspondents mostly are, and I was like. I don't know if, it just felt like one of those things where it was like, look, I'm here. I'm going to do it. I went down there. I read it. And I remember like I was learning the lines.
In the moment? Did they say they didn't send you the script ahead of time or anything?
No, they gave me this. I got there and then Gina Brown, remember Gina Brown? She came out and she gave me the script. She said, here's the script for, for the show. For the audition, and I looked at it. Just
so people know, what happens is because I was a writer on the show too, and you're writing the jokes in the morning, but you're also writing the correspondent pieces with the correspondent, and then somewhere around the middle of the afternoon, the correspondent piece is about put to bed, and they start producing, and then rehearse it at 4 or 5. So my guess is this was probably middle of the afternoon, right? At this point,
it was like around 3:30 or so.
Exactly,
right? It was right before rehearsal.
Yeah.
So what happened was she gives me the script, and it's all this stuff, and it's like, and I don't know, I'd never done it. So I'm trying to memorize it. I'm trying to learn it. Mm-hmm. And then like 15 minutes later or so, she comes out and she's like, okay, John is ready to see you. And I was like, oh, can I have 5 more minutes? I just want to like really get this down. And she was like, no, it's on the teleprompter. You don't have to memorize it. And I was like, and I remember being like, because, I was like, I come from theater, right? So I was like, I've done Shakespeare and Ibsen and Chekhov. And I was like, teleprompter. I was like, oh, fuck, this is a fucking piece of cake, So like, I like walked out there. Stupid. I was just like, I was like, whatever, teleprompter. I can do this with my eyes closed. And I think I was like, if I get it, I get it. If I don't get it, I don't get it. I don't care. Like, I don't think I realized, what it was going to do, the magnitude of it or whatever, and I think that did help me. I think that like, basically I was like, what am I going to do? I was like, well, I'm just going to do my best Stephen Colbert impression because I don't know how to be a Daily Show correspondent. Right. And so I was like, I'll just do Stephen Colbert. Yeah,
raise the octave of your voice a little bit. Arch an eyebrow and sound like you know what you're talking about when you
and I just did that faux seriousness, the arched eyebrow, the cockiness, and then John just offered me the job for that. And to be fair, it was just a one-off when I came in. It was a one-off gig for that night. And they put me on the air that night,
which never happened before. I've been on the show for a long time. That has never happened, and never since happened in the history of the Daily Show.
Right, it never has happened, and
it's a very arduous auditioning process where they write some stuff up for the person, and then they want the person to write something too, so they get a sense of that person's writing. Because essentially, as a correspondent on that show, and I want you to talk about this for a minute, you're kind of writing on the fly during those interviews in your head because you got to adjust. It's an unbelievable story. So then when you left that night, they didn't offer you a job that day. Like they called you a following week or something and offered you a job? Or
no, what they did was that John was like, I like you and I want you back on the show. So at the time I was doing a recurring role on this show called Jericho out in LA on CBS. Mm-hmm. So I would be out in LA shooting Jericho and I would get a call from the Daily Show, and they'd be like, do you want to come in and do a piece next week? Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, great. So for the next few months, I would just come in and just keep doing pieces. Mm-hmm. And they would, and the writers would be like, hey, we got this thing, we got this idea, and I'd come in, and they'd be like, oh, they're right. And then, and I'd work with the writers a little bit if I wanted to, but it was mostly like there was this kind of period of time where John was sort of getting to know me, and I was sort of getting to come in and do pieces every now and then with the Daily Show. And then it was about 4 months later that they finally, I was called into John's office, and he said, I remember he said, you've been spending a lot of time out in LA. And I said, yeah. And he said, we'd like to figure out a way to keep you in New York. And I was like, really? And he was like, what about if we gave you a contract here? And I was like, holy shit. So then that was like in January. The first time I was on was in August of 06. And then in January of 07, they actually offered me a contract.
Now, during that 4 month or so interim period where you're kind of just doing pieces and you say, as you say, learning, getting to know John and John getting to know you, were you getting notes in terms of point of view or approach in your work?
Yeah.
Say, hey, a little less of that, a little more of that. Like, what were the things you were doing right? What were the things that you weren't doing that were quote unquote Daily Show-esque appropriate?
Well, I mean, I think that John would certainly. We'd have like on the show. There's always a post-mortem after the show, right, where John kind of just talks to the writers and what was great about the show, what didn't work as well, and so I would be in those post-mortems after the show, and often John would say he would give me sort of almost directorial notes on maybe not so arch next time, maybe you can ease off on that a little bit, let that play out, let that breathe a little bit more. I think you'll get a bigger laugh. You know what I mean? So there was a kind of process of sort of in those 4 months, sort of just getting me up to a level where I think he felt comfortable to offer me a contract on the show. I think he wanted to see that I could do this consistently to some degree,
Yeah, that doesn't often happen a lot of times. People just throw you in. If it doesn't work, they move on to the next one. That's a really great way and a smart way on John's part to kind of build a person and have so they fit into the whole motif of the show. Tell quickly about the Don Yelton interview that you did, the North Carolina GOP. And just in a broader context, if in your experience in the field where you're sitting there going, because typically what happens, and you could describe it a little bit, you kind of prepare ahead of time with some writers what you're going to do and the producer, and you go into the field, but then stuff happens in the moment. Have there been moments where you're sitting there in your head going, holy shit, I cannot believe this guy's saying this, and wow, and was Don Yelton one of those moments? And tell people about that gentleman and what happened.
Well, Don Yelton was a GOP committee member down in North Carolina, and he basically went on. The piece that we did was about voter fraud and about how the Republicans were sort of creating all this legislation to stop essentially poor people who vote Democrat to get to the polls and vote and students and people who didn't have IDs or whatever. It was this whole thing, and it was all about that was the story. And then we talked to this guy Don Yelton, who asked me about this, and in the process of talking to him, he started saying all this crazy racist stuff.
Yeah, he says stuff like black people can say the N-word, but he says the N-word. He says that black people can say the N-word.
Paul, I think I just lost you for a second.
Yeah, this is weird. I think it sounded like somebody was driving a truck through the interview. Okay, here we go. So he says stuff like black people can say the word nigger, but white people can't. And
right.
And at one point you go, do you know people can hear you right now?
Yeah. Well, it was weird because
it's a great line.
Yeah. Well, what happened was actually that we. So he was saying these things, and it was for me in that moment, it started with sort of these lazy blacks. If they just want to if they don't want to get themselves an ID, then why should they whatever. It was they can't get out, and it was just kind of this. And then he started talking about Obama and how he drew a picture of Obama as a witch doctor, but the best part was he said I was making fun of his white half, not his black half. So. But it was But it was crazy shit. It was like, and what happened was, there ended up being so much of it that we were in the edit, and we had put this stuff together of all this stuff he had said, and John saw it, and and he was like, okay, that's great, and then as he was walking out of the room, I forget who was said to him, like, John, there's twice as much stuff that he said than this,
Mm-hmm.
And John was like, really? And I was like, we were like, yeah, there's a lot more really racist stuff. And he was like, well, why are we leaving that on the cutting room floor? And it was only because of a question of time. We just thought it was too much,
Right.
And he was like, no, we need to hear all of it. Like, we need to hear all of that. Yeah. So we ended up putting it all in there.
Yeah.
And then that line that I had, where I didn't know what to say. Like, it was honestly like, for me in that moment, it was like, just stay out of the way. Just like, he's driving the bus.
I want to get into. Like, you're like, this is where I talk about like why the audition process involves, can you write? Because now you have to write in the moment when the guy says to you, well, black people can say the word nigger, but white people can't say the word nigger. What's going through your head?
I am going, honestly, like, what's often going through our heads at those points is like, oh my God, he's like, you're like, this is great. This is great. Oh my God. It's like what I call the I fucked the chicken moment, where the guy says, I fucked the chicken, right? And you're just like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because you only need like one or two I fucked the chicken moments in a field piece.
Right.
And to get it, like, you got a piece. Oh my God, you got like some great, but when you get like 5 of them, and they just keep coming, it's just like,
you get a hard on. You get a hard on.
Yeah, you're like, I'm like, oh my God, just don't. Please. I'm afraid to say anything that's going to stop him from continuing his racist diatribe, So I'm just afraid that I'm going to cut him off, right. And he's going to like take it, so it's almost like you just want to, yeah. So my thing is like, oh my God, try to think of something funny, and find the moment that you can say it. What's the right, if you say it too early, you'll lose all this great material that he's giving you. If you say it too late, you'll have lost the timing on it, So when can you say that thing, when is he done? And you can come in with your funny line,
Right.
And so that really was, you're in the mechanics of it so much. It's not until later that you go, holy shit, that's crazy, like it's, in the moment you're so in the mechanics of like, okay, he's saying all this great stuff. I know I can't, like I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to fuck this up, So it's just about trying to, because as a Daily Show correspondent, you are operating in the moment. You've got your producer feeding you stuff off to the side, so you're listening to that. You're also trying to come up with stuff in the moment that you can respond, or places where the subject will take you that you didn't expect to go, because you have your list of questions, but they will say something that will lead you down a path that you didn't and you got to be ready to go, right. Down that road. So there's the producer telling you stuff.
Now the producer telling you stuff. So like, let's say you're interviewing me and I start to say some outrageous stuff. You get to the point where you think, okay, will he like just stop the interview for a second and just come over and sort of point a couple of things out on the script that you guys had kind of, the outline that you worked up, and then you go back into it? How is he feeding you in the moment? Because I know you're not wearing an IFB. You don't have.
No. We'll stop our interviews. We stop and go all the time. Like, we'll just stop and be like, hey, let's don't forget to ask him this, or don't forget to ask this, or you know what I mean? Like, and so you have a person who's helping you out in that moment. There's 2 of you flying the plane.
And by the way, the producers on the Daily Show are utterly fantastic, because
they have
they have to know how to tell a story visually, but they also have to be really good writers, really good story structure people, but also comedians and who can write. Like, they're really, really fucking amazing. They're like the backbone. They're so super
I
talented.
mean, being a field producer on the Daily Show is one of the hardest jobs I think.
Oh yeah.
Out there. You know, it requires so many different skill sets, and so you know you have that person who's like got your sort of co-piloting it with you. You know,
right.
And then you're also trying to think of the edit. You know, you're also trying to think of like when we make this into a 4-minute piece. What are we gonna? You know, what is the stuff that we're never gonna use? What is the stuff that we actually are gonna use? What is, you know, you're trying to.
You're thinking about that in the moment. Like, do we have this great bite that we need that sort of is either served?
Yeah.
Ideally, I think you want the bites to serve one of two, and ideally both purposes, which is to project the story forward, but also be funny. And if you get both of those, that's like a win-win.
I mean, when that happens, it's you know, when you realize like there's comedy happening and the story is being told at the same time.
Yeah.
That you can't ask for better than that. I mean, the one time that happened it's happened a few times, thankfully, but the one that I remember the most was when I was in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, interviewing this woman who was running this mosque, and that they were protesting the building of this mosque, right?
Right.
And she was, and it was a stupid bit, but it was so great, and it was just like, you know, comedically, you know, you'll appreciate it. It was like, because she was an imam in the mosque, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she was also a mom, like a mother. And so it kind of came, or it happened organically, where she said, I said, so what do you do here? And she's like, I'm an imam. And I was like, and it just came out. I was just like, so you're a mom? And she's like, no, I'm an imam. And I'm like, so how do you have time to also be a mom? So you're a mom, and then she's like, no, I'm not a mom, I'm an imam. And I was like, so wait, you're a mom? And it was just, you know, and I'm not doing it justice right now, but it was so beautifully constructed. It happened in the moment, and it was one of those things where I could hear Tim, our producer, like literally doubled over behind me, laughing, and I didn't know. I thought, this can be the whole piece right here. This can be the entire interview, and it will be hilarious, you know. And it was so stupid, but it was so funny, you know.
Well, it's funny
when you find that moment, you know.
Oh yeah. On the writing side, when we would come up, you know, we'd sit in the room for hours trying. Okay, we got to come up with a new segment with the thing, and then you can't get it, and then you go away and you're in the middle of writing something else, and then it fucking happens. It's like, it's the weirdest thing, but like it comes, you got to be ready to like see it, spot it, receive it, and do something with it, because it comes to the oddest moments. And so Yeltsin ends up resigning, right, as a result of it's because the GOP to finish that story for people. And how did that end, really? Like, so
when the piece aired, he was fired because the GOP.
That is the power of Aasif Mondavi, everybody.
I mean, here's the thing: at the Daily Show, we rarely actually make, I think, a difference. I think a lot of what we do is incredibly cathartic for people. It's incredibly like, you know, John's, you know, what he has created and what he's been able to do on the show is, you know, been huge. But it's rare that we actually change policy or change something in a very sort of 1-2 kind of punch. You know what I mean? Right. It may happen like years later or something, but this was literally, this piece aired, and the next day the GOP was like, "You're out." and I think the reason was because I think they were reaching out to African American voters in North Carolina, and then they've got this guy on TV saying the N-word, you know? Right. And it was just like, I think they were probably like, you know, you can say that, but you can't say that on TV. Like, you know, it was one of those things where they were like,
that's supposed to be in the room where we're smoking cigars. That's not
right. They're like, you can't tell people that we in public that we actually feel that way, you know? So I think there was something where he kind of revealed the man behind the curtain a little bit, you know?
By the way, I'm sure that your line where you said to him, "Do you know people can hear you right now?" summed up exactly how the GOP officials were feeling when they were watching that. They were probably going, absolutely. "You're on fucking TV, idiot. Shut up."
Yeah, that was exactly. And I think that's why that line resonated, because I think that everybody was thinking that while they were listening to him. And then I just I happened to say, we can hear you, which was just exactly what everyone was thinking, and so it was just one of those moments where, but I, again, like he got fired, and then weirdly enough, doubled down the next day on a radio interview where he was like, the GOP are a bunch of pussies, and they don't have a big enough tent to include people like me, and whatever. He was just like, so he didn't care. That was the thing. But and then when he got fired, of course, it made national news. So then it was on like CNN and Rachel Maddow and all that stuff. And then the story blew up. And then people would buy me drinks in bars. Like when I go out to bars, people are like, dude, that was all. And I just get like shots. People buying me shots,
That's hilarious. Hey, do you think our parents versus us, I think my parents and certainly my grandparents came here and really like appreciated and embraced America for all the good that it can do and all of that. But then as the generations sort of continue, and I'm wondering, I know your parents, am I get this right that your father came here in part because he was not happy with Margaret Thatcher's policies in England?
I think that England was, in the early 80s, and we lived in the north of England in a sort of, working class city. And I think that it was pretty depressed, and I think he had always dreamed, he actually wanted to move to Canada. And he, for some reason, always thought, I'm going to move to Canada. I don't know why. And then he found an old college buddy of his who was living in Tampa, Florida.
Oh.
So he changed his whole tune, and it was like, Tampa, Florida, city of the future. He was basically like, that's where we're going. Yeah. So, it was like one of those things where he suddenly decided, and then he came out here, and I talk about this in the book as well, where he came out and had like sort of wanted to like go on a reconnaissance mission to Florida to see if he wanted to move the family, and came out here to Florida, and somebody took him out for brunch. Yeah. And this idea of brunch, he was just so taken with this. And he called us in England, and I remember he was like, in America, they have so much food that between breakfast and lunch, they have another meal. It's called brunch. They have a third meal. And he really thought that's what it was. And he was like, it's amazing. This is a land of plenty.
There is only upside to living in this country because of brunch.
Right. So part of the reason, I'm not saying it's a whole reason, but one of the reasons why he brought his family, he moved his entire family to America was because of the idea of brunch.
you have to, all of your success, you have to attribute to waffles, basically.
It's really true, yeah. Waffles, pancake.
Do you think that our generation, though, sort of starts to kind of, what's the right word? I don't know, maybe whine, bitch a little bit about America, where our parents wouldn't, because of all the things that America brought to our parents that they didn't necessarily have available to them in other cultures. But now we're here and we live here and we expect more. And so we look at America through a different prism than our parents do. Because
I think that, look, my parents came to America and it was the land of opportunity, of their hopes and dreams, all that stuff, right?
Right.
But now, for us, we've grown up here, we've, been educated here, and we have the critical eye to be able to now look at this country, which we consider to be our country, right, in a way that our parents probably didn't. And so we have, I think now what we have is some kind of ownership over it in terms of like, I want to make this place better, like, which
but
I
also
think is natural.
We have greater expectations from it than maybe they did. Like they were happy with getting, 3 out of 10 and we want 6 out of 10, What I mean?
Well, they were happy to, like just make a living, do well for themselves, so like have a home and like, and have 2 cars in a garage and, the American dream as it was for them. But our American dream is different,
Yes.
And so I think that's why our American dream, especially for people like, say, who are like for myself, it is in some way like I have the opportunity to, like, for example, The Daily Show has afforded me an opportunity to be able to speak into the culture in a way that my parents never dreamed of. You know what I mean? Like they never dreamed. They just wanted to like get their, be able to pay for their kids' college. You know?
Right.
And that was it. That was good for them. Like that was it. But to have the idea of actually shaping the culture, of actually being able to speak into the culture, to be able to do something and affect America in some way, that is a whole other level of the American.
Yeah, it's a really good point. My parents, small business owners, high school educated. I ended up going to law school, and I worked on Wall Street as a lawyer and investment banker, and I left to be a comedian. And
I'm sure they were very excited about that.
It's fucking crazy. Part of it was like that this is a place to have a point of view and say stuff, and And then the Daily Show happened, just like you, kind of on a lark. I asked her, "Do you want to be a writer? Submit for it." And one thing, and I thought the thing would get canceled after a few months, and I'd move on to the next thing, and then it turned into this like, I don't know, whatever craziness. And so, but I know exactly what you mean. I do think parents want that too. But parents want us to strive, and I want my kid to strive for something even higher than I'm striving for, right? Kind of want to, and that's what you can do in this country. But the nice thing that you're doing is not just the Daily Show, but I want to talk about Halal in the Family, which is a web series that's coming out in April that you created and came out of a Daily Show piece, and tell people about that. And it's sort of this goes back to what I was saying, where you're sort of taking this mantle and run with it in terms of, wanting to speak to some of the issues that are important to the Muslims around the world and Muslim Americans. And talk about that a little bit.
I think that what happened to me when I got on the Daily Show was that I started to like go out and do these pieces, the field pieces, and speak to people who were Islamophobes or racist towards Muslims, or protesting a mosque, or or whatever it might be, and I started to get a sense of the sort of the fear mongering and the the leveraging of Islamophobia and Muslim bigotry as a political tool, and as a tool that the media uses in order to get ratings and for sensationalism and all that stuff. So what happened was that there was in 2010, I think 2011, maybe 2010 or 11, we did this piece on the Daily Show based on something that Katie Couric had said, which is that like maybe what American Muslims need is their own Cosby Show. And so, as we want to do on the Daily Show, we sort of took that literally and made it absurd, and sort of like, because the idea that Cosby Show solve the problem of racism for African Americans.
Forever.
You know what I mean? Okay, so if it's as simple as that, let's do that, So we kind of took this idea and turned it into this parody sitcom.
Yeah.
And it was called The Cosby Show. QU'Osby, right?
Right, really.
Yeah. So, and it was the all-American Muslim family, and it was sort of satirizing this family who really wants to who's Muslim but wants to be as American apple, like listening to country music and eating pork ribs and pork juice and the whole thing, and like don't want to be regarded with those bad Muslims, Right. And so, anyway, so we did that on the show. It was a good piece. Like we put the actual 5-minute episode that we shot on the web, on the Daily Show website. And then a few years later, I was approached to maybe do something in sort of the PSA area. And I thought, well, with all the work and all the stuff I've been doing at the Daily Show around sort of Islamophobia and bigotry towards Muslims and racism and all that, like I thought this would be a good place to do this and to do something separate. And so we actually ended up getting the permission from the Daily Show and from Comedy Central to use that concept of the fake parody sitcom. We changed the title because, for obvious reasons, we changed the title to Halal in the Family, and put together and Miles Kahn, who was my producer on the original piece. He and I got together and ended up writing these 4 short episodes. And now, and so we're gonna launch them on the web. And we did a very successful Indiegogo campaign which is still up there. You can still give money if you want, but it's officially over. But now
And that money was used to produce or to do
Well, it
post-production?
was we'd already shot the episodes and everything. This money was essentially used to pay the people that needed to be paid and to do post production.
So did you have a production company funding this, or where did you get the money?
Yeah, we got money. We got money from various foundations. We got money from the Ford Foundation, and we got money from Muslim advocates and various Islamic organizations and non-Islamic organizations as well, who like sort of gave us this money, and it was crowdfunded as well. And so we put together this series. It's going to be out in early April. And on the web, and it's called, like I said, it's called Halal in the Family. And what we did was we took specific issues that Muslim Americans deal with, such as surveillance by the NYPD, or cyber bullying, infiltration of mosques and stuff like that, or whatever. You know what I mean? And these issues that are part of the American Muslim experience now, unfortunately, and sort of satirized them and made these 4 episodes of the show, and we're very excited about it. And
these are full length. These are full length episodes, 22 minutes, or
no. They're just 5 minutes. They're 5 minutes.
Oh, great!
And each episode is, like I said, dealing with. They're very digestible, and we want to create a web presence for this, and maybe we'll do more if it goes well. And, this idea of being able to like talk about social issues, but using satire in this particular way to point out, to deal with these things.
It's great. It's great. And then you've got and so people can see that starting in April. And then you have The Brink on HBO, which you're a part of.
Yes.
People about that a little bit.
So The Brink is very excited about this, actually. It's a HBO series starting June 21st. It's a half-hour comedy, it's a geopolitical comedy about a global disaster, but seen through the eyes of 3 departments of U.S. government. So it's seen through the State Department, the Foreign Service, and the military. And the 10 episodes follow one sort of global crisis, but it's a comedy. It's kind of like MASH or Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of that, and it stars Jack Black, Tim Robbins, Pablo Schreiber, myself, Carlo Gugino, John Larroquette, and the whole. It's got a great cast, and it's going to be out at the end of June.
And were you involved in the writing or production of that? Did you write that?
So yeah, actually, what was crazy was I got hired as an actor on the show, and then after we shot the pilot, I got this call from Roberto Benabib, who created the show, and Jay Roach, who is one of the executive producers and also directed the pilot.
Yeah, great director.
Great, terrific guy, and both of them. And they called me up and they were like, "Hey, we have a crazy idea. We need another writer for the writer's room, and we're wondering if you would be interested in writing." And they knew that I had written a movie that, I'd written a one-man show years ago, and I had written a film that was inspired by my one-man show called Today's Special, and the book I was writing at the time. And so they were kind of like, "We know you're a writer and you've contributed to writing on The Daily Show in one form or another, and so would you be interested in doing this?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And
That's
so
great.
Went out to LA and got involved in the writing of the show. So it was great for me. It was a little bit, an actor in the writer's room is a bit like the hen in the, a fox in the hen house kind of thing, But it was great, and the writers, and it was a great team of people to work with, and it was a lot of fun. And actually, I think what was great about it is the first season of The Brink, the central storyline takes place in Pakistan, and so perfect. I think that I was also able to bring a certain cultural perspective and authenticity to that.
So, like when they were when they needed to order, like a restaurant scene where they needed to order a Pakistani dish, you'd be like, "What do you call that?"
I'd be like, "Well, yes, that's
and then they
that's
say,
called."
"Thank you," and then get out of the room. Like
right. They'd be like, "Okay, now go get us some chai." I'd be like, "It's called a kebab." No, but
when you say that an actor in the writer's room is like a fox in a hen house, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think
are they gun shy to sort of reveal how they really feel about something? Or are they feeling
no, not at all. And what I was saying about that was that like it's like from their perspective, it was a bit of a risk, because when you bring an actor into the writer, it's like, well, I need to have more lines.
Oh, yeah, that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why don't
Right.
we write me
Yeah.
a song here? I could sing a song if you
Yes,
want.
but you're not the president of the United States in this show.
Right.
What do you mean? Why not? Come on.
Right.
I'm tall enough, whatever.
But
Yeah.
you know, but I to be they were incredibly embracing of me in there in the writers' room, and I also was conscious of that fact and really tried to service the narrative as opposed to my own kind of whatever. You know what I mean? And in terms of what was good for the story, so it worked out well, and I very excited to have been part of that. And actually, the series is great, and I think it's gonna.
That's great. We need something like that. There's not any. It's filling a void that's existed for a long time, like you mentioned, since MASH, and you definitely need something like that. So that's June 21st. You said that premieres on HBO. Yeah. April is Halal in the Family on the web. Your book is No Land's Man, really funny book, and you see him on the Daily Show getting old racist white guys fired from their jobs. That's his destiny. Hey man, this has been awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, man, this is great, and we'll be seeing each other at the show. But I just wanted to get people to know more about you and follow all the great stuff that Aasif's doing. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
All right, man, that was great. I hope that was okay for you. That was.